So when was the point that you decided to become a Muslim exactly?
Well, as I mentioned, more and more as I began to, do this research and things like this on my own, reading different books, and I began to, as I was mentioning, lean more toward the Islamic viewpoints, and especially when it came to the issue of God or the Creator being one in every single sense of the word, with regards to his lordship, with regards to worship only being directed toward Him and Him alone, without any partners, without associating anything with Him. These became more stronger, in my heart. And so during this time, I spent about 2.5 months or so visiting a local mosque that was near me. And I would come in different questions, different times, and speak with the different people that were here. And I remember one brother. He every time I would come, he used to ask me, "So Are you ready to become Muslim?" And I would tell him, no, no, not yet. When I'm ready, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. And but really, I think that each way I looked, as I was pondering over these different things in my mind, it always came back to Islam. Everywhere, everything that I was considering, that I was looking at, I was researching, was always seemed was leading me toward Islam. And finally, one day when I was sitting here at a masjid, I was speaking with one brother, and I remember making the comment to him that I couldn't have imagined that 6 months prior that I would have imagined myself sitting inside of a mosque, speaking with Muslims, and thinking about considering Islam, and that it was just such a that really it was like I can see the guidance of the Creator in this, that what was happening. And so finally he looks at me and he says, so are you ready? You ready to become Muslim? And it was finally, my heart was ready, and at that point I said yes. I was ready, and I accepted Islam as a way of life for myself, and I've now been a Muslim for approximately over 2 years now.
So Abdullah, we know that every heart has a different key. The thing that open your heart to Islam, the points that it makes you a Muslim, that make you turn your face to Islam and enter Islam. What things that moved you the most in Islam that make you leave your former religion and you become a Muslim?
Well, one of the main things that as I mentioned earlier when I was talking about, questioning this doctrine of original sin, this was one of the big things I think that contributed toward that. Again, as I mentioned before, we can find, for example, in the Old Testament, this idea of justice, when it came to, the responsibility that each person has with their own actions. And we come to find that this is something that is also present in Islam, that each person will render account for what he does on his own. And, when it comes to the Day of Judgment, there will be nobody, to stand beside you to share any kind of guilt or anything like this, nor will you have to share the guilt of things that, of other people, things like this. Everybody will be responsible for themselves. And this was something that I felt very strongly was consistent with the teachings from the prophets of the past, and again present in Islam, part of the message that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also brought. One of the biggest things as well was really the concept of Tawheed, and the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should only be worshipped alone, without any partners, that in Islam you don't pray to other saints or anything like this. It is a connection between you and between your Lord, between you and your Lord. And this was one of the biggest things, because again, as a Jehovah's Witness, when I was one, Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in the Trinity. So they do believe that there is one God, one Creator who is almighty, although of course they do accept Jesus, peace be upon him, as Son of God and things like this. they still do have this belief that there is only one God. And this was a belief that I continued to hold as well, since I didn't find the Christian, or mainstream Christian reasonings of the Trinity and things like this to be convincing. I also believe that it was incompatible with what was presented in the Old Testament, where it says, for example, in the book of Deuteronomy, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord." And we find this concept as well found in Islam, La ilaha illallah, that there is no other God or deity or anything worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this to me, again, was something that I seen as a continuation of the message that was given by all of the previous prophets, that there was one God and only He should be worshipped, and Him alone. And this was something that really appealed to my heart probably the most, because we see this very simple faith, the faith that was believed of, that Abraham believed in, peace be upon him, that he believed in one God, that he didn't believe in original sin, he didn't believe that God had a son, and all of these different things. And so why should we, complicate it with all these things as is being taught in Christianity? We see that's very clear how these things more than likely got introduced into the religion that Jesus, peace be upon him, brought. Of course, he was teaching the same beliefs of Tawheed, that there is one God who should alone be worshipped. In fact, those words are even reported in some of the Christian Gospels, where somebody asks him, what is the greatest commandment? And he says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord, and it is Him alone you should worship." And so, again, this is a continuation that we find in Islam. And this was something very dear to my heart and appealed to me the most. And not only this, something that I even really began to develop a deep love as well for the Prophet, peace be upon him, as well, for the fact that he came, he upheld this belief, he taught this belief, he strove very hard with his life, with his energy, to proclaim this message. And this was something that was just very, beautiful to me. And of course, with this belief, I really was inclined toward Islam and came to accept it as a truth and as a way of life that I was willing to, submit myself to.